17 suitcases, 17 million, 17 names. Ibrahim. Traoré looked at the list he had placed. On the table, all of this is money, earned from our gold. The VIP section of Ouagadougou Airport had never been this tense. It was 1:45 outside Africa's starry sky. Inside witnesses to an event that would change history, he said, adding that everyone at the airport was silently watching. Normally, at this hour, the airport would be nearly empty. Just security guards on night shift, 1 or 2 cleaning staff, and perhaps a few passengers waiting for a delayed flight. But tonight was different. Every area of the airport had been taken over by Ibrahim Traoré's special security unit, and red beret soldiers had positioned themselves at key locations. The French diplomatic aircraft was encircled by armored vehicles on the runway. The pilot was still awaiting takeoff clearance, but it would never arrive, and the plane's engines continued to run. Ousmane Dio, the director of the airport, Ibrahim Traoré, the youthful leader of Burkina Faso, and Colonel Madou Cabaret were seated around the long, polished table. The windows of the VIP lounge were foggy with condensation, and the tension inside contrasted with the chilly night air outside. Aminata Traoré, the justice minister, and the night's star sweat trickled from French Ambassador Jacques Dubois' forehead to his collar, soaking his pricey suit. His hands trembled a little, and he kept shifting positions to conceal it. "Mr. President," he said, trying to control his voice, "this must be a misunderstanding of diplomatic immunity under international law." Traoré raised his hand to silence him, but his eyes were filled with disappointment rather than anger. "I am not a shield to be used for stealing our country's wealth. A diplomatic passport is not sufficient for committing theft." Kabor opened the thick file on the table and took out pictures from the airport security cameras that read 47 p.m. At 11:15 p.m., he started reading as 3 cars from the French embassy arrived at the airport, and the 17 luggage were loaded into the aircraft. At 11:38 p.m., you reach the VIP area. The airliner asks for takeoff clearance at 11:45 p.m. These are diplomatic goods. Justice Minister Aminata interrupted Dubois's protest in accordance with the Vienna Convention, which stipulates that diplomatic cargo cannot include illegal materials, weapons, or drugs. What's contained in these cases, Ambassador Dubois became motionless, and his gaze flitted to the door, possibly seeking a way out. But 2 soldiers were standing there, and there was no way out. They said the word Traoré, but the chamber was heavy with the weight of that word. The first luggage, which was black and sturdy-looking with diplomatic seals on it, was lifted onto the table by 2 troops. "I took pictures of every piece of seal evidence," he claimed, "so no one can deny it." When the contents of the suitcase were exposed, the lock was opened and the lid was gradually raised. Dio, the airport director, whispered, "My God," without realizing it. Euro banknotes were neatly stacked and stuffed to overflowing in the suitcase. Each stack had bands wrapped around it that displayed the French central bank's seals. Kabor grabbed a stack and put on his gloves. Traoré added, "This is just the beginning." He swiftly counted exactly 1 million euros, including 100 euro notes and 10,000 euros in each stack. As he unlocked the suitcase's side compartment, gold bars emerged, each bearing the Burkina Faso stamp. "These are the results of our people's labor, and come from our nation's mines." Dubois' face had gone pale. "Don't lie," he continued. "I don't know about these embassy staff acting on their own. According to Aminata's rigorous analysis, every bar contains a date that was extracted within the previous month and is still associated with export data, but who was paid? When the second suitcase was opened, hundreds of pages of paperwork were revealed. With his UV light, Kabor examined the documents and declared, "These are originals, not photocopies of the original state documents." Traoré started looking through the records, his expression growing more solemn as he read mining maps. He claimed that gold reserves were not yet made public, that uranium deposits were even ... and that even our recently found oil fields were extremely secret. "Only 5 people in Kabore are aware of me. I am the chief of staff and the energy minister." He paused when he saw a name on the list, and geology director Pascal Ourago Traoré filled it out. Thus, he was hired as the airport director. Curious, Dio inquired, "How valuable is this information?" He replied that if foreign companies learn this information in advance, they can position themselves before tenders, they can buy land, they can make agreements with local companies, and they can gain billions of dollars in advantage. "I need to use the loo," Dubois muttered, as he attempted to stand as the third suitcase was opened. "Sit down," Trey ordered. Although his tone remained the same, there was a noticeable steel will inside him as he said, "We're just getting started." The third suitcase was filled with hundreds of photographs. Cabaret started arranging the pictures on the table. Each one had a unique narrative. He displayed the first picture and stated, "Minister Sawado at a nightclub in Paris." "Who's with him?" General Cao, a French arms trader, continued, "What's that briefcase in his hand money?" "At a Geneva bank." The pictures appeared to be limitless and were meticulously taken, with dates, times, and locations logged as part of a professional surveillance and blackmail operation. They showed Governor Zongrana's wife shopping in Paris and the French mining company footing the bill. What were you intending to do with these threats of blackmail against Dubois? When the fourth suitcase was opened, Dubois was unable to respond since the response was too clear. "Weapons," Kabor whispered, stepping back. "Be careful." Modern surveillance gear, including listening devices of all kinds, camera systems so small they could fit inside a button, drones the size of birds, signal jammers, and frequency scanners, was packed in the suitcase. As Cabaret examined a gadget, he remarked, "These aren't ordinary equipment. Look, it has the NSA logo. This is American intelligence equipment. How did it get to France?" NATO stated Traoré technology is shared among friends, but it is used in independent African nations. The fifth suitcase included dozens of phony identification documents, passports, driver's licenses, and diplomatic cards under other names, but the pictures were of the same people. "And I recognize this face," the person stated. Dio, who arrived last month as a human rights observer and was with us last week, displayed his passport. Aminata revealed a third identity while interviewing Minister Sawado. The same individual stated Kabor, but with 3 distinct identities. Jean-Pierre Martin Dubois François. Michel Bernard works in a variety of fields and nations. Traoré stood and made his way to the outside window. He glanced to the aircraft that was still waiting on the runway. He inquired of Dubois, "How many years have you been playing this game?" With his back turned, Dubois remained silent. "For how long have you been sending spies to our nation and using blackmail to control our leaders? For how long have you been taking our oil, uranium, and gold?" The stillness became deeper as the 6th suitcase was opened, and inside were the Burkina Faso Army's most classified records, weaknesses in deployment plans, armament inventories, and personnel lists. "The General Staff's safe contains this information," stated Kabor. "He is shocked that only 3 people can access it, according to 4. "You neglected to tidy, Traoré. Lady Mariam has been employed there for 20 years, and although no one notices her, she hears and sees everything." Kabor was shocked to hear the elderly woman say, "Don't be fooled by appearances." Traoré. The most effective spies are those who raise the least amount of suspicion. The seventh suitcase included cash, but this time it was in several currencies, including dollars, euros, pounds, and even Chinese yuan bribes funds, according to Aminata payment, in any currency that each individual desires. The eighth suitcase was filled with upscale goods, including pricey jewelry, watches, and electrical gadgets. Each carried a little card with a modest gift from Minister Traoré. General Fando's valued wife's graduation present for Governor Zongrana's son was read by Kababore. "They're buying families, too," Aminata remarked indignantly. "Not just officials, but their wives and children." This is impossible inside, where documents related to Traoré's private life photographs, audio recordings, even medical reports, Kabor said as he dropped the papers in his hand after opening the ninth suitcase. Traoré said, "My last checkup results," grabbing the paperwork that only my doctor and I know. Kababarit then displayed another document that had word-for-word transcripts of your secret security meetings. Traoré reviewed the documents on Tuesday at 3 p.m. in the secure room. Participants included me and the defense minister. The topic was the closure of French outposts, and we swept the room frantically. Only 3 persons had entered the secure area, and all 3 were in this room unless the defense minister stated otherwise. Cabaret impossible. There can't be a listening device. "Maybe there isn't one," said Traoré, "but there is a person who everyone looked at." Slowly, Kababor declined to attend that meeting because he was ill. No, Traoré did show up, but he only stayed for 5 minutes before leaving, stating that there had been an urgent call. Do you recall that Kababore mentioned the weapons shipment from France? "It was a coincidence," he reiterated. "There are scientific reports in the 10th suitcase, maps of water resources, soil analyses, and geological research. They claim that these are state secrets. According to Aminata, French corporations will utilize these to make us offers after our universities and research centers spent years preparing," said Traoré, as though they had found them themselves. The 11th suitcase contained a wealth of propaganda items, films, posters, brochures, and a fresh outlook for Burkina Faso. Kababore read leader, "According to General Laurent Compaoré, considering that we believed he had perished in the 2019 coup attempt, Traoré said Kabor and the French have been keeping him hidden." According to the videos, Aminata used expensive, professional production equipment that made it impossible to film these in Burkina Faso. Traoré said, looking at the video background, which shows the top of the Eiffel Tower. The 12th suitcase contained chemicals, tiny powder bottles, packs, and capsules. Dio Kabor snatched one and looked at it, finding that his face was poisoned by a variety of poisons. "What are these questions?" He read the labels and found it to be tasteless, odorless, and undetectable. "Mimics a heart attack and stroke, and looks like a food poisoning assassination kit," according to Traoré. Ambassador Dubois finally said, "I'm just a courier, and I don't know what these are, but you loaded 17 suitcases yourself, as evidenced by security cameras." When the 13th suitcase was opened, a technology expert was called immediately. It contained hard drives, USB drives, and CDs. After a brief period of questioning, technology expert Abdul Lay raised his head and said, "Mr. President, these are copies of our entire digital infrastructure." Aminata asked, "What do you mean?" Dio responded, "Whoever has these can paralyze the entire country. They can stop banks, cut communications, even disable the power grid, and use cyber warfare weapons. Our government systems, banking network, and telecommunications infrastructure are all backed up here with passwords. The Traoré. They now use computers to battle instead of tanks and aircraft. The drafts of oil and gas agreements and contract signature pages were found in the 14th suitcase. Take a look at this clause. According to a contract Aminata is displaying, the French business will own 80% of all oil and gas discovered, with Burkina Faso receiving only 20%. The worst part of the Cabarete 50-year concession was that they would exploit our oil for 50 years. Traoré displaying the page with the signature. This is my phony signature. An impeccable fake lists comprising hundreds of thousands of names belonging to students, teachers, journalists, union members, clergy, and artists were found in the 15th suitcase. "What kind of list is this?" Traoré said, his expression darkening as he looked over the list of potential opponents of the new authority. Aminata displayed a paper with codes next to names: K for closure, T for arrest, S for exile, and A for death. How many of these had an O next to them? I asked Kabore Aminata, who listed 47 individuals, including opposition leaders, journalists, and judges. Traoré displayed his name first on the list, and the 16th bag held maps and satellite images that showed every critical location in Burkina Faso in great detail. These were military satellite images, and according to Cabaret, the clarity is so high that you can read license plates here. Traoré displayed a map with all of our military installations outlined, along with our ammo stocks, gasoline tanks, and weapons depots. The assault plan stated, "Everything is prepared, Aminata. They are only awaiting orders before opening the last and 17th bag." Traoré inhaled deeply. "This is the last one," he declared. "Let's see what surprises it has." There was only one file within the heavy black cover of the suitcase when it was opened, and it was inscribed in gold letters. Sankara's hands trembled a little as he took the file on the secret tray. When Thomas Sankara, the renowned leader of Burkina Faso, opened the first page 36 years after his death in 1987, the date at the top read October 15, 1987, the day of Sankara's execution. Sankara Traoré started reading with an objective: Thomas Sankara's removal and the establishment of a pro-Western administration. There was stillness in the room. Everyone listened with their breath held. The French Secret Service. Following a successful burning operation, DGSE CIA liaison officer Bla Wankari and 12 Burkina Faso officers killed Sankara and 12 of his allies by using an armed attack during a palace gathering. When Kari came to power, French interests were protected, so he turned the pages and saw pictures of Sankara's body, with bloodstains and gunshot holes. "Look," he remarked, pointing to the final pages. Functioning Sankara Phase 2, goal for 2023 to 2024. Ibrahim Traoré's goal is to remove Traoré, who is carrying on Sankara's legacy approach, which calls for political pressure first and an economic embargo as a last measure if that fails. Purchasing 17 senior Burkina Faso officials and getting Lauren ready for physical elimination. In contrast, when the backup leader budget of €50 million was approved, Paris Operation Active Traoré closed the file. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were filled with anguish. 36 years later, he said, the same situation, the same methods, the same killers. Dubois stood up. "I swear, just the suitcases, be quiet. Traoré, it's not time to talk anymore." He turned to the cabaret colonel, who declared that everyone on the 17-name list would be arrested right away, and their homes and offices would be searched. Their possessions will be confiscated. "Yes, sir," The MPs will see these documents at tomorrow morning's extraordinary Parliament meeting, and everyone will understand." At last, he turned to Dubois, your envoy, and said, "Mr. President Dio, the airport will be closed. No one can enter or leave. All flights cancelled as you command. I'll give you a single opportunity. Dubois hoped you would return to Paris, but not by yourself. I'm sending you a message that includes copies of all 17 documents, photos, and audio recordings, and you will deliver it." Traoré approached the window outside as the African sun was just starting to rise, and Burkina Faso was no longer a colony. You could not use money threats or extortion to purchase our people anything, including gold, uranium, and oil. Thomas Sankara was slain, but his principles persisted. He finally told Laurent Compere and his pals to come. "We're ready," but this time the outcome would be different. He turned to Dubois. "What if France responds?" Dubois suggested economic sanctions and military action. Let them arrive. Fortunately, Africa is waking up in Mali, and it's not 1987 anymore. At 6 in the morning, Guinea, Niger, and I are all together, and the entire world is watching. National television in Burkina Faso cut out, and a Traoré appeared on the screen behind him. Dear folks, he started tonight, when we watched one of the most significant moments in our history. I will spend the next 2 hours sharing the contents of the 17 suitcases that were seized. Traoré displayed each suitcase's contents one by one, including money, documents, photos, and weapons. Everything was broadcast live to the entire globe. He said, 17 suitcases, 17 million, 17 traders, but we are 17 million. We woke up in Burkina after the broadcast concluded. On the streets of Ouagadougou, thousands of people held banners and flags that read, "Long live independence." Zara down with the placement of the colonialism component. Crisis discussions were being convened in Paris when Sankara's children awoke. The foreign minister was more cautious than the French president, who was furious and demanded that something be done right away because the entire world was watching, and the evidence was clear that if we intervened, we would lose all of Africa. "What will we do?" the defense minister yelled. "We'll wait." And an elderly diplomat said, "and hope that other African countries don't do the same." However, it was too late. Burkina Faso's bravery has caused a chain reaction in Mali. President Amy Goa called an emergency meeting, declared that all contracts with French companies would be reviewed, and said that stringent inspections would start at our airports. Thousands of young people in Niger took to the streets, demanding 17 suitcases and yelling that our uranium is ours. Similar protests started in Guinea. Senegal, inspired by Traoré's bravery, the youthful leaders of Ivory Coast, Africa, requested an emergency meeting at the UN, where the French delegate declared, "This is a violation of diplomatic immunity. It's against international law." What does international law say about plundering resources from sovereign nations? The Burkina Faso delegate stood up, holding paperwork. What does it imply about using extortion to manipulate their leaders, and about assassinating Thomas Sankara? The representative placed the files on the table with the contents of the 17 suitcases so that everyone could see and know why there was silence in the hallway. The Chinese delegate spoke, and we back Burkina Faso's claim to sovereignty. Those who do not accept that the age of colonialism has ended will remain in history, the Russian delegate continued. The U.S. delegate remained silent, since they were unable to publicly endorse Burkina Faso's and France's strategic ambiguity. There was a public celebration in Ouagadougou that evening. Fires were lighted in the squares, drums were played, songs were sung, and an elderly man sobbed while holding Thomas Sankara's picture. He claimed that after 36 years, Justice had finally been done. My father works in the mine and receives $2 per day. But the gold he collects is worth $10,000. This will change once a young woman spoke into the microphone. Education will be free. Health care will be free because our resources are ours, a group of teenagers were chanting. Traoré was exhausted but resolute as the cabinet discussion proceeded in the palace. What happens tomorrow? He questioned the defense minister. France won't stand idle. The economy minister was asked, We have gold. And Traoré replied, We have uranium soon, we'll have oil, we'll print our own currency, we'll set up our own bank, and we'll create a common market with the African Union. We're prepared, Traoré said. We have a defense agreement with Mali and Niger. Russia and China promised support. And most importantly, our people are with us, economic sanctions. The internal minister was questioned. What about the traitors inside? 17 detained individuals stated, Cabaret interrogations are still going on, and they've given 50 more names so far. The network is larger than we anticipated, and we'll clean them all. They all said, Traoré, but they'll be judged fairly, because we're not like them, and we're a state of law. At midnight, when Traoré was by himself, he went out to the balcony of Ouagadougou, stretched under its lights, and while the celebration sounds were still coming, he took a small photo of Thomas Sankara from his pocket. The following morning, French newspapers featured Traoré in their headlines as a tyrant, thief, and terrorist. But no one believed him longer after pictures of the 17 luggage went viral on social media. Commander, he muttered late, but we accomplished it. The hashtag number 17 Suitcases went viral throughout the world, and discussions started in the European Parliament when progressive lawmakers chastised France for continuing to practice colonialism in the 21st century. Conservative members of Parliament went on the defensive, claiming that these were domestic African issues, but in reality, Pandora's box had been opened and would never be closed. A week later, there was an unexpected development. A team from France led by Pierre Foucault, a former diplomat, and Jacques Foucault's grandson arrived. We wanted to speak with him, and he stated we wanted to open a new page, which he agreed to, but with restrictions. My folks will watch the live broadcast of the discussions, which will cover everything Foucault had to acknowledge when they started. Traoré took the lead, saying, Let's face your past. Would you acknowledge that Thomas Sankara was killed? After a lengthy pause, Foucault spoke. Mistakes were made in the past, he said, raising his voice. Is killing a leader? Foul. France did play a part. We apologize for the live global broadcast of this confession. It was a historic occasion. Let's now look to the future, stated Traoré. Foucault, we acknowledge that Burkina Faso is an independent nation and that our resources belong to us. We also agree that all mining contracts will be terminated and that new ones will be made on an equitable basis. Do you agree that we may talk about this? Foucault remained silent. Tay, no discussion. Do you agree that Foucault phoned Paris and that, following a lengthy phone chat, he returned? We agree that your military bases will be shut down and that your men will depart the nation. Foucault responded, This is unacceptable. And the conversation ended. A month later, Laurent Comper attempted to cross the Burkina Faso border with 200 mercenaries with the intention of staging a coup and overthrowing Traoré. But Traoré was ready because intelligence had reported everything beforehand. An ambush was set up at the border. The clash was brief, the mercenaries surrendered, and Laurent Comper was taken into custody in court. Traoré stood up, waited, said Foucault, Okay, we accept. And after hours of negotiations, a historic agreement was signed. Carré admitted everything. France offered support, provided money, and sent weapons, but they lied and abandoned me. Unexpected development was seen in Burkina Faso's economy 6 months following the 17 suitcase incident. The international press was astounded by the Burkina Faso miracle, so they wrote a speech saying, "There's no miracle. We're just using our own resources ourselves." The 17 suitcases were moved to a museum called the National Independence Museum. The money from gold exports was being returned to the people for the first time, and a school was constructed in every village. A health center was opened in every neighborhood. Job opportunities were created for unemployed youth, and agricultural projects were initiated. Every day, hundreds of people visited. Schools brought kids, and an elderly instructor told the pupils, "Here, children in these suitcases, was our country's stolen future." "Teacher, will the French come again?" a young girl questioned when our president retracted it. "Even if they come, we're awake now, and we won't sleep again." The teacher grinned. Burkina Faso did not sleep again, in fact. History books would later reflect, the 17 suitcases incident was the beginning of Africa's second independence movement. The 17 bags were more than simply cash and papers. They were a symbol of resistance and awakening. The second independence was economic, and this time it was genuine, whereas the first was political. Although Traoré is remembered as the commander who unlocked the 17 suitcases, he consistently asserted that "my people did the real work. They woke up, took ownership, fought, and won." Burkina Faso, which is known as the land of upright people, lived up to its name once more. There were 17 suitcases, 17 million people, and 17 traders. But in the end, there was only one truth: freedom. That night at the airport, more than just luggage were opened. A nation's eyes were opened, and they would never close again. The final word came from a young girl who asked her mother, "Mom, is our gold ours now?" As she observed the 17 suitcases in the museum, her mother answered, "Yes, my daughter. It's ours now, forever, forever." And the young girl grinned because she saw that she now had a future, a free future, made possible by 17 suitcases.